They called him retired. They called the dog too broken. The room was full, but when they gave the order to put the canine down, only one man moved. He was blind. He didn't ask, he didn't hesitate. And when the silence hit, even the generals stopped breathing. Because what they didn't expect was that the canine remembered him too.
They gathered in silence outside the kennel. The air smelled like bleach and resignation. This wasn't just any canine. This was Echo, a war dog that had served in more operations than most of the men standing there. Explosives, ambushes, night missions. He'd done it all. But now, with a torn hind leg, damaged hearing, and what they coldly called unmanageable aggression, Echo had been labeled unfit for service, and the next step was procedure. The handler stood stiff beside the vet tech, clipboard in hand, reading off dates and deployments like a eulogy. Men who'd fought beside Echo now looked away. Some clenched their jaws, others blinked back guilt. No one volunteered, no one moved. The order had come, and Echo was set to be put down. Behind the line of uniforms, a figure moved, slowly, steadily, tapping the floor with a worn cane. The group parted, confused, watching as a blind man in marine dress blues stepped into the light. He didn't say a word, didn't ask for permission. He simply walked forward. "That dog saved my life," the man said quietly. His voice wasn't trembling, it wasn't angry. It was final, like he wasn't here to argue. He was here to take Echo home. The silence cracked wide open. One of the officers stammered something about policy. Another said the dog couldn't be trusted anymore. But the Marine just knelt, slowly, and called one word: Echo. The broken canine, who hadn't responded to anyone in days, lifted his head. Then he limped toward the man, tail trembling, ears twitching, and pressed his face into the Marine's chest like he'd been waiting for years.
He wasn't supposed to remember. Not after surgeries, sedation, and months locked behind bars. But Echo remembered. The moment he pressed his scarred muzzle against the Marine's chest, the entire room shifted. Officers who'd signed the paperwork looked away. The handler who'd fed Echo daily clenched his fists. And the blind Marine, Sergeant Mason, simply whispered, "Good boy, I got you." They tried to argue, "He's unstable, he's a liability." But Mason didn't blink. He's a Marine. The silence hit like a shockwave. A younger soldier, barely out of boot camp, asked in a whisper, "Sir, is that the dog from Kandahar?" The old man nodded. Operation Black Veil. 2 hostages, 1 minefield, 3 enemies hiding in the dark. Echo had led the charge, found the tripwires, and when one of the insurgents grabbed Mason, it was Echo who lunged, took the bullet, saved the mission, and now Canine was set to be put down because they called him damaged goods. The Marine Corps had medals for bravery, but not many for loyalty. Mason didn't want compensation, he just wanted to take Echo home. Finally, a major cleared his throat. Paperwork's already signed. "Then unsign it," Mason said, "or I'll sit here until someone drags me out." Nobody moved. In the corner, Echo lay down beside him for the first time in weeks, at peace. Because they had been broken in the same war, and now the blind Marine had stepped forward alone again, not to fight, but to keep a promise.
The next morning, the order was reissued. Headquarters wanted the canine terminated by noon. No appeals, no exceptions. The kennel staff stood in a quiet circle, holding the new command in their hands, but not one of them dared look Sergeant Mason in the eye. He hadn't moved all night, still seated beside Echo, one hand resting on the dog's back. The two of them had become immovable,
like ghosts haunting the bureaucracy. "They're serious," whispered a lieutenant. "Yeah," said another. "So is he." The base commander arrived, full stars on his shoulder. He wasn't here to argue. He was here to finish it. He walked straight up to Mason, towering over the blind Marine. "You are no longer active," the commander said coldly. "You do not speak for this facility." Mason didn't rise. He just said quietly, "I don't need to speak." He already did. Then Echo, without command or training, lifted himself and sat alert beside his Marine, just like he used to on missions. The base went silent. Because this wasn't just protest anymore. This was loyalty under fire. The general turned to the staff. "Execute the order." Silence. Not one soldier moved. Not one handler stepped forward. And then, without warning, 4 Navy SEALs stepped into the room. No words, no ceremony, just a presence so heavy it changed the air. The commander turned, confused. "What is this?" One SEAL spoke. "We served with Echo and Blackveil." Another added, "You don't put down a Marine who saved your life." The tension cracked like thunder. This wasn't a debate anymore. K9 was set to be put down until the blind Marine stepped forward and others followed.
They didn't call it an override. They called it a reevaluation of risk. But everyone knew what really happened. One blind Marine refused to sit down, and 4 Navy SEALs stood beside him. Now, policy bent like steel under heat. That afternoon, the termination order was pulled. Echo was no longer marked for destruction. He was cleared for release. But there was one condition. He had to leave the base that day. Sergeant Mason didn't hesitate. He stood slowly, one hand on his cane, the other on Echo's harness. There was no ceremony, no applause, just the quiet sound of boots and paws walking away from a place that forgot what honor meant. But as they reached the gate, something remarkable happened. One by one, Marines began lining the sidewalk. Not shouting, not clapping, just standing, saluting, in silent respect. The blind Marine didn't see them, but Echo did. His ears perked, tail lifted, stride stronger than it had been in weeks. Because this wasn't just an exit, this was a return. Later, footage of that walk leaked. Within days, it reached Capitol Hill. What started as a quiet protest became a national debate, and Echo became a symbol, not just of loyalty, but of refusing to let heroes die forgotten. A bill was introduced weeks later, Echo's Law, requiring military working dogs to be offered adoption to former handlers or veterans before termination. It passed, unanimously. And in a quiet house by the sea, Echo rests by the feet of the Marine he once carried through fire. Because when K9 was set to be put down, a blind Marine stepped forward and changed everything.